Good evening, ladies and gentlemen. Welcome to the Racing Lanes podcast. I'm your host, Rico Muhammad. Tonight, we have our resident insurance expert, Mr. Tommy Root, will be joining us tonight. We apologize for a little bit of a late start. Had a couple of little technical issues, but we were able to work them out and get it straightened out. So, as they say, there's no business like show business, and the show must go on. So the show is going on. We got all the kinks and everything worked out, and we're getting ready to come to you guys live and in living color. If you have any questions whatsoever, go ahead and jump down into the chat, type your questions out. We'll try to make sure that we get to them and weave them into the conversation. Also, a little bit of housekeeping. Next week, 4th of July, we are going to be on hiatus. Hope everyone has a safe and prosperous 4th of July coming up. What else is? I want to make sure if there's anything else. Make sure, please, helps us get into the algorithm. Make sure you like, share, and subscribe to the show. Helps get us out there, helps get the show out to a broader audience, and we definitely would always appreciate your help and assistance with doing that. With that being said, and without any further ado, let me welcome my co-host, Mr. Chuck Snow, to the show. Good evening, Chuck.
Hey, Rico, how are you?
Hey, we're working it out. We had a little bit of a snag.
Yeah, you're good, man. So's Tommy. You guys got it all straightened out. I was amazed.
As usual, we are able to manage to work it out. How are things on your end?
Really good. No complaints. Everybody's good. I'm keeping busy, and really looking forward to having Tommy on tonight. He's just knows so much about truck insurance, and as some of the new entrants have found out, truck insurance can be a pretty tricky thing. So we're trying to guide everybody, both the people that listen to us and watch us that are highly experienced and the new people, everybody. That Tommy has stuff to share with all of us. He's a wealth of information, probably one of the most knowledgeable people in all the United States when it comes to truck insurance.
Absolutely.
And I certainly value his expertise. He certainly helped me many, many times out of some jams through the years. And I don't know if our listeners know this, but Tommy's family and my family go back to trucking back to the early 60s when Tommy's late father, Merle, used to haul gladiolas for my father out of Florida up to Canada. That's how I know Tommy. So it's an old family relationship that's over 60 years old. It's good. Those wonderful things.
Good stuff. So we don't want to keep him waiting any longer.
No.
We appreciate Tommy for taking the time out to come on and join us. Hey, Tommy.
Rico, look what I got in honor of you today.
Oh, what you got there?
National championship matches your shirt, my friend.
Yes, sir. Yes, sir.
I'm in my Clemson family. This is where I am tonight. I thought I'd just recognize that. All right, just for you, honoring you.
We appreciate it. We appreciate it.
There's maybe fighting words with some of our listeners.
Being a Wake Forest graduate and having a son-in-law from Florida State, we kind of diverse here, and a granddaughter graduated from Alabama, so we touch all bases there. But my grandson is the manager of the basketball team in Clemson. He's a sophomore, so
good deal.
He's involved in the sports.
Good deal. Well, Tommy, we got a few things going on. I'm gonna be selfish for a minute. I got a couple of questions that I want to ask because I got a little bit of a situation I'm going through. A couple of at the beginning of last month, somebody backed into my truck at the shipper. Getting ready to try to get some issues and some things worked out with it. But I got a letter from my insurance company, as a matter of fact, and it says that the above caption loss has been received, and we are in the process of investigating the facts of potential subrogation recovery. Be aware that many states require you to mitigate and reduce your damages, which can include renting a replacement unit, and may limit the amount of your recovery if you fail to do so. So is this saying that I have to rent a recovery unit, or I won't be able to?
No, they're talking about they owe you the repair of your unit, but they also owe you your deductible back, and they also owe you loss of use. And what they're saying is they're not going to pay loss of use unless you go get another unit. Now, they'll pay you to do that, to go start back and work here. So what they're saying is they'd rather pay for you the rental unit than you sit there and do nothing and claim loss of earnings.
So I can't get to use that for a vacation time.
But we teach this part. So what you need to do, did you turn it into your physical damage carrier?
Well, yeah, I'm going through. I'm sending it through my insurance and let them, because I tried to initially.
All right, let me tell you what you got to do. Hold on.
All right.
You got to tell your physical damage carrier not to settle the claim.
Go ahead, Tommy.
Okay, not to settle the claim, that you're going to pursue the deductible and the loss of use, because all your insurance company can do is get what they paid you.
Mm-hmm.
You need to get a copy of the accident report.
Got that. I already got that.
Send a certified letter to the driver and the owner of the vehicle.
To the driver and the owner of the vehicle.
And tell them that you're going to demand the payment of loss of use, loss of earnings, diminishing in value,
loss of use, loss of
diminishing
earnings,
in value, and the damage done to the truck. And that police report should have their insurance company. If it does, send a copy of it to their insurance company. Or if you've already got their insurance company, send them a copy of it.
Got it.
Okay? Now, one other thing. How much insurance do they have? They got enough, you think?
Yeah, they should have enough.
Okay.
But Great West has already got a lot of the stuff rolling.
All right, good. But that's what you want to. Now, what you can do is just go down to International, Navistar, or Kentworth, or whatever, and just find out what you rent per day, find out how long it's going to be repaired, and don't, just charge them for that rental per day that you could rent one for.
Right. So now, so they would just be on the hook for the rental, not the mileage.
That's
right. What you mean, not the miles?
Because on the rental, with a rental, you pay for.
Oh no, they're being charged for the miles. Whatever you pay the rental company.
Oh, okay. Okay.
Hold on. Will they pay for the miles as well?
Yeah.
Oh, okay. I didn't realize that.
I mean, if the rental company charges it, yes.
Okay.
Because that's the depreciation on that unit here. They won't pay for the gas,
right,
and stuff like that.
See, I knew I had the right. We was having the right person.
Let me ask you something, Tommy. If Rico would have hired a claims adjuster, would he have done this for him on his behalf already?
Claims adjuster probably wouldn't take this case because it's so minor in that case. I would hope they would, but his agent should have done this. I know who his agent is. I didn't mean to say that, Rico.
No.
Foundation. Don't blame them, but go back and tell them to follow my rules. He's been there and understands that. Okay.
No, yeah, but he was going to help me, but Great West, like I said, Great West stepped in and they've been.
Well, that's fine. They're going to pay it then. Don't worry about it. The only thing they say mitigation is you can't sit there and do nothing. You got to go get a truck,
right,
and start earning part of it.
Right. That's what, and that's fine because I was planning on doing that anyway.
No. All right.
So okay, so we got that out the way. But see, you never do know what you ladies and gentlemen. This is the great thing about us being able to bring you guys, great guests, onto the show that industry experts, because you don't know what you don't know, and if you're a little bit confused or anything like that, and you got somebody to help break it down to you in much more simpler terms than what the legalese is on a letter. It's always it's always good to have somebody that can help demystify those things for you.
And you couldn't have anybody better sitting here than Tommy Brook.
Absolutely.
Well, we've done it before, but that's fine. Anyway, I'm glad that helped you there. Chuck, you remember what we talked about earlier?
We talked about a whole bunch of things early this morning.
This camera things. Two things came up today. I was listening. I was actually on Mark Willis's Road Dog show today.
Okay.
The show before that talked about a driver named Doug. He said, my wife gave me a vent recorder, a camera, a dash cam. He said he was running down the road and this vehicle in front of him started brake checking him.
Right.
But they were on ice road. They lost the ice road. They slid off the road and then came back on the road and he T-boned them.
Right.
Both of the witnesses said that the truck ran into them. Damage here. He had the camera and showed the policeman And the policeman said no, they lied, and they actually arrested them for making a false police report, and they got him out of the case. And the policeman said if you had not had the camera, you would have been cited for that, which would mean you lost your job.
Right.
The second situation we had, are you familiar with these cases in New Orleans where you have the stage crashes?
Oh, yeah.
We had the attorney who originally found that out, one of the 4 attorneys who found that out. And they solved
back
that.
up here, Tom, hold it. Let's just share this with our listeners, what happened in New Orleans. It is just it was a dirty case of fraud against the trucking industry. But if explain to the audience really quickly for those of our listeners that don't know what happened.
The way they describe this is that there's a car in the front, which is a spotter car in the back, and somebody runs into the tires of the truck. The driver who runs into it, as the driver of the truck gets out, changes and puts 3 or 4 more passengers in that car. Then they go up and run a medical bill, and then they sue for those damages. And this lawyer figures they paid $300 to $30 million to $60 million on these claims. And they have not been reported. They finally solved this because they found a pattern of it. You follow what I'm saying? And they solved this. And let me go here. And they put cameras there and caught the cameras, which got them. But the problem is the state is not prosecuting these people. They've got probation. The sheriffs and all. Louisiana is so politically or whatever. I'm not going to. It's not a good venue. So they had to, and the sheriffs won. They had all this data, so they had to go to the FBI, and so the federal is prosecuting them, but they've only got probation and things like that, not restitution. It's a real problem here. But there has been the first case that he had there. That guy actually got killed because he was going to be a witness.
Ooh.
So it's a nasty situation there. He figures there's probably 200 to 300 claims.
There were
I'm sorry, Chuck.
doctors and chiropractors as well as lawyers involved in this, correct?
Right. Yes. 2 lawyers. One lawyer's already been going to jail or been convicted. He hasn't gone to jail yet.
Lost his license.
And this happens all the time. So the answer to our audience is 3 things. Report the claim immediately. Any claim. I don't care how small it is. Don't worry about the consequences. They'll get far worse trouble with their insurance company if they don't report the claim than if they do. The insurance company are not going to blame them for having these kind of things happen when it's not their fault. Second, have the camera. And third, make sure they take their own camera and take pictures of the site. The vehicles hit, the people standing around there, see if these people coming out of the car, are they walking, ambulance, how they look, this kind of stuff. Even with the idea of predator towing, the towing company vehicle, how many of those towing companies out, the people they send the towing company out, how many trucks the towing company send out. So there's enough documentation that when we sort it all out, that they can do it. But then tell the driver never to say anything to anybody but the police.
Right.
And just tell the police. Don't speculate. Don't think they did this or that. Just the facts only.
Yep. That's great. You know what? That's great advice. Now, in this case, they had, when they caught them, they had side cameras on the trailer. Is that how they did it?
If Rico, I don't know how you feel about this, Chuck, but once 300 cameras, front, rear, and side. What are they going to cost? $600?
No, your cameras are fairly inexpensive now.
That's what I'm saying. $500.
You can get an
To
entire
have
system.
all that record.
Yeah, you can probably get an entire
as
system
he
for
said,
about
as a
$400.
lawyer said today, one little fender bender like Rico had would pay for those cameras, even the deductible back.
So, Tom, another thing I want to talk about. Speaking of cameras, we had our friend Hank Seaton on last week and what brought it up was there was 2 weeks ago we had a catastrophe in Manitoba, just outside of Winnipeg, and we had 15 senior citizens killed who were in a bus. 10 or actually 16. 10 were injured, and there was question right away who was at fault, but the driver had a dash cam and it was obvious he had done nothing wrong other than just travel down the road at a safe rate of speed, and the bus came out of nowhere, and the truck T-boned him, and the camera immediately exonerated him. And I asked Hank his legal opinion. He's all in favor of forward-facing cameras, but he personally has an issue with driver-facing cameras. Having run a fleet and having been a partner with the insurance company for over 40 years, I certainly understand. I understand both sides because I still have a commercial license to drive once in a while. But if you're not doing anything wrong, I don't think you have anything to worry about. And I think that driver-facing camera, the forward-facing camera facing the driver, can exonerate you pretty quickly. What's your opinion, Tom? Is the insurance industry going to insist on this coming up the road fairly soon?
The insurance industry would like road-facing and driver-facing when possible. However, some people, this lawyer today doesn't like driver-facing. I know some claims people that I deal with that do not like driver-facing part of it here. The reason I pointed out is when you get to court, if you got one, there's always this allegation, well, they were texting or they were distracted or they were reading something, where if you got the inward facing, you shut that down.
Yeah.
And that's the part. It's not privacy. It's a workplace. I think I shared this with you. We were doing a show there, and they said if I quit, if they have an inward-facing camera, I'm going to go walk for Walmart. We remind them Walmart has cameras. Every business has cameras.
They would have them.
It's not privacy here. Now, you and I talked about this, and Rico, you agree with that. The camera should not run when the truck's not running.
Right.
It's only when it's going, the part of it. And that's the real advantage here. And I'm not trying to put any age in it, but I think some of the younger drivers are more acceptable to this kind of stuff than the older drivers. The reason the insurance companies, all of them don't demand it, is exactly what you said, Chuck. There's too much pushback by the drivers. So they want the risk, so they take credit for what they can get. And that's the forward cases. Actually, American Transportation Research Institute just did a study. 68% of their people who report, the truckers who responded to the report had forward facing, but only 28 to 30% had driver facing part of it. But they cited a number of cases that the drivers facing got the case closed. It exonerated the driver, that part completely. For example, the new Florida law, it just got passed, says that if the four-wheeler is more than 50% at fault, they can collect nothing from us. So you got the forward facing, this part. Will you always be able to prove that the driver didn't do something on the other side, trying to get that 50%? That's the question that we thing that I'm going to push back on this too. Part of it, the new apps where they're using the cameras to train the driver, to remind the driver, to watch their eyes, to this kind of stuff, make sure they don't do the cell phone, distracted driving, and things like that. That's becoming something that's going to be increasingly required for the insurance carriers to have a preferred risk and to have the less cost. I was with a company who specialized in this stuff Monday. I had breakfast with them, and they were actually giving a 20% discount if they have those apps now.
You know, I was just going to ask that if the insurance industry has gone that route, and it makes sense because that, I got to tell you, if somebody asked me to invest in insurance for trucks, I would insist on that because I don't want to say it hedges my bet, but it certainly makes it a safer bet. And that's all insurance is doing, is they're betting on your ability to run that fleet or drive that truck.
They're betting on the safety culture and the ability to defend them. I have an underwriter, and when he does one of my program, he says his bottom decision is, can he defend that risk?
Yep.
If he decides to write it when it goes in court. That's the CSA scores. That's the event recorders where you got all the documentation. That's training the driver, and not just have it. If they're not going to train the driver, then it's worse than not having the camera part. Right. They don't be proactive and use it for the reminder part of it.
I also do think that the the driver-facing camera it's a great, it's almost a deterrent from having drivers do things that I've heard they do. Now I have seen it I was appalled when we were in Italy and we were traveling in a bus, and I noticed so many young drivers in Italy. Now the speed limit is, it's about equivalent, I think it's 90 kilometers an hour, 55 miles an hour. And I would say that 3/4 of the young drivers I saw driving 18-wheelers were all watching television.
But they've
I'm not
got
making this up,
they
guys.
got automated autonomous vehicles now.
Well, these weren't autonomous vehicles.
Oh,
These
they
were
were not.
just, these were just trucks, plain old cab overs, Volvo and Scania and a bunch of other types. I wasn't really familiar with, doing 55 miles an hour. And I remember those days of 55 miles an hour, and it was pretty boring. But I never watched television or read a pocketbook.
I know this is, what's distraction? They're in the they're in the road, they're in their own lane, this kind of stuff. I don't know what other crash mitigation equipment they have to warn them or not, but you cannot do this today over here. But you know what? Did you see the report that I think it was Freightways or JJT the day that U.S. has more crashes per population than any other nation?
Yeah, which is,
deaths.
it's kind of surprising if you take a look at countries like India, where they don't even have lines on roads and stuff, and the United States has more crashes.
Right.
Pretty awful. I don't think that's anything to be proud of.
Well, you wonder why. I mean, obviously, there's now one of the insurance companies that I'm dealing with. There's now an app to shut your phone off so you can't text or use it while the truck's running, except for emergencies. Part of it.
That's fair.
That becomes favorable in the risk for the driver who has that. You just can't do it. I was listening to one of the drivers on this fleet safety program, a couple of them around the country that one of the manufacturers do, and he actually put one of these apps facing himself, owner operator, him, just to remind him, just to see if he could drive without getting a warning. And a couple times he was looking over too long, and they warned him to come back. One time he said they reminded me that I was getting too close to the front, and he says they were wrong. They were wrong. I looked at that and he said maybe they were right.
Yeah.
When he thinks about it, when you have those parameters there, so it's more of a reminder of what they're doing. We talked about earlier, Enrico. I've talked to a number of underwriters. An underwriter rather have a relatively younger driver with some experience with technology than somebody old like you.
He's young. He's very old like me.
That's complacent. That's done it all. That doesn't touch all the bases. That knows the shortcuts.
Yeah. You know what? I think what happens is you get familiarity breeds contempt. And I think what happens is drivers get cocky like anybody else, because you do that job every day for 50 years. You know the truck, you know the route, and you may take chances that a younger driver probably wouldn't.
Right.
And
with the crash mitigation, lane deviation, these blocking stuff, the point is that with that kind of stuff, to keep reminding them to look forward, those things improve the driver. All that stuff is not to wash the driver. All that stuff is to improve the driver. All this stuff is driver assistance. We got to preach that word. It's to help the driver be safe. And very honestly, it's to bring the driver home alive. I mean, when you boil it down to, technology is doing that.
Yes,
my car every now and then warms me, and I thank it for doing it a couple times. Not that I had a crash, avoidance, but you never know when something happens in front of you in today's roadways.
Exactly. And, I see these guys going up and down the highway way too fast. And I always think, and they're following the vehicle in front of them much too closely. And I think, my gosh, if that person, whether it's a truck in front of them or a car, if they slam on their brakes, somebody's going to get hurt here.
And that goes back to stage crashes they're trying to do and stuff.
Right.
You know, brake checking, the truck does that. You know, they were talking about the example I gave you earlier. To brake check them, they gave him the high finger salute and all this, I guess, because he figured
Told
the
him he
driver
was
was
number
going
one.
too slow in that part. But you know, we got to learn how to. We got to teach our younger people how to drive around 18-wheelers more often. We got
Yes,
to have the
not
police
mentioned.
to start policing some of that, and have a respect for this, for the business itself and the drivers too. You know, we're not all drivers aren't all innocent in this place, but most of them are there, and most of them are trying to do it right. But it's
Yeah,
tough
you know
out
what?
there.
It's the majority of truck crashes are not caused by the trucker. It's caused by it's the car driver. I think it's about 80% of the time.
I had
Well,
an
the numbers
incident.
run from 62 to 78, but you're right in that part. Rico, go ahead. What do you say?
I had an incident earlier the last week. Yeah, it was last week. So I had to put my car. My other car had to put it in. It had to go back to the dealership. Had to have some service done to it. And the dealer, they was generous enough to send me a lift, send me
A rental car.
kind of like an Uber. No,
Loan.
not like an Uber. It's called, but it's similar to Uber, but it's just called Lyft service.
Yeah,
Lyft, right.
similar. Yeah.
The driver that picked me up, man, this guy was driving like a bat out of hell. I mean, it scared the dickens out. I was fearful of my life. We got into three near misses. And, you know, and I'm sitting in the back seat, but it just another reminder to as us as professional drivers, remember that we are supposed to be professionals. And the thing about it is that regardless of what everybody else is doing, because we're supposed to be the professionals, we're going to be the ones that's going to be held to a higher standard, and more accountability is on us. So we have to make sure that we are doing as much as we possibly can. We're not driving our own personal vehicles or anything like that. We're driving huge commercial vehicles, and we have to remember that we are supposed to be the paid professional, not the other people. Even though I agree that definitely there's a lot more could be done for educating the public on how to maneuver and drive around us and things of that nature. But at the end of the day, it's still, you know, as one saying that I always say, you know, people don't want to hear nothing about the labor pains. Just show me the baby. We gotta make sure that we are always maintaining our professionalism when we're driving.
Well, Rico,
you know,
that gets
you're
back
right.
to the cameras. That's the proof that we're doing it, because we're going to be held to a standard higher than anybody else. So, and with no disrespect, I mean, some drivers, I even have a problem sometimes to articulate exactly what happened and remember stuff. The picture's far worse than 1,000 words.
Yes.
You know, and you don't have to have a driver that is well spoken. And I'm not well spoken. You know, English is a foreign language to me. They told me that in college, part of it here. But if I don't have to talk and I can show the picture, how much better is that?
Yeah.
You don't misforget. You don't. And we know all these athletes who have gotten trouble, and the pictures in the elevator and all has the ones that are damning it. Same kind of situation here. I give you another example that they had, and this is one they said, well, why was I at fault? This lawyer gave an example here that they have a camera and they showed our drivers at fault. So they went in with a death claim with the children of the driver died in there with their attorney and says, we're sorry, we made a mistake here. Now we're offering you this much money, the medical part. And then he turned to the attorney and said, attorney, by the time 3 years from now, when this case is over and you take your fare, will you guarantee they're going to get more than that? That attorney bit his lip, said nothing, and they settled something for about $800,000. It was clearly over $1 million case. Right. These are what we're learning about things. But why we did that, instead of paying reconstruction, paying other lawyers, they go offer the money to the people who are hurt. That's who they need it. We don't need to pay lawyers $500 an hour, and the claims attorney don't need to take 30% of the settlement just to get somebody injured made whole. And our system is so warped now because of that.
Well, yeah, there's a lot of, when there's a serious crash, there's an awful lot of money spent on all sides between lawyers and reconstruction teams and, and I've heard of engineers getting involved and all sorts of different people. And if the driver's definitely at fault, take that money and you know what, you settle the claim and the people that rightfully deserve that money get it.
And pay the legitimate money.
Yeah.
And make them whole.
Everybody wins. And you know what? If the truck driver didn't do anything wrong, well, then he's exonerated. It's real easy. And, I think the older drivers have a real problem with this because it's transitioning from we all got into this business as kids because we were the last of the American cowboy.
Entrepreneur.
Nobody was going to tell us what to do because we had the open road and a big truck, and we didn't have to really. If you knew what you were doing, you didn't have to answer to anybody, really.
Cowboy boots and bennies.
Yeah, if you didn't get caught speeding, you could get away with all sorts of stuff. And through the years, we've had deregulation since, but we've had kind of a re-regulation where what we didn't have with stupid laws with you could only haul this on that road and all the rest of that malarkey. Now we've had a re-regulation on the side of safety. And some of it is damn right stupid. But other stuff is really good and it's good stuff. And I think, I think the trucking industry needs to be applauded because I think we've done a phenomenal job cleaning up our act. I know that for years we had a huge drug problem in the industry. We cleaned that up, about 20 years ago through drug testing. And
you might want to tell them the drugs are not the hard drugs. They're the bennies and these kind of things keep people awake and all that. I don't think
confident, Tommy, which is even.
I'm sorry.
Awake is one thing, but falsely overconfident was the other with those.
Right.
bennies.
Yeah. This makes you over. Right.
Listen, we all took them. I know damn well some of your dad's drivers took them because they used to drive from Florida.
I know them say they're seeing the bennies bump coming off the front hoods. But the point is, when I say that, it's not marijuana, it's not heroin, it's those kind of drugs that we're talking about.
Yeah, exactly, and
that's the point I'm making.
Facing
and alcohol, obviously.
Yes, there was a problem with alcohol, which I don't see. In all the years we were in business, we smelled liquor on a driver's breath once, and it was in a safety meeting. And he was supposed to be he was in the yard the night before. There's no way he had alcohol because he didn't have a car, and we fired him on the spot. I pulled him out of the safety meeting. My wife smelled it on his breath. I smelled it on his breath. We confronted him. He had some bullshit story, pardon my language, ladies and gentlemen. And we terminated him right there because we just didn't tolerate that.
I got a question with everything that's coming down the pike with laws locally and everything and the push to legalize marijuana.
Yeah.
How does the insurance industry, how is this going to be handled, especially if it happens to get federal, if it happens to get federal legalization?
I've done a webinar. I've had a 4-hour session in the Phoenix conference just about these subjects here. It's a no tolerance. In fact, I just downloaded FMCSA about how a driver, a new brochure, 2 pages, how a driver can return to duty, return to work process to understand it here. Part of it. Rico, it's the problem we have today, and Chuck and I talked a little bit about, and this is going to be information that's just rolling out. This is more current. I mean, this is right off the press. It hasn't been reported that I've seen in the press that I found from a lawyer who deals with this every day, who stays abreast of this on Monday when I had lunch with him. But the question is impairment, and we have no measurement of impairment. So now it's a class 1 narcotic, so a drug. So it's just any part of your system. It's not if you're impaired or not. And the question is, why can I have 3 beers on Friday night, do my 36 hours, drive money I'm not stealing? Where if I have a joint on Friday night, I'm not impaired. I can drive, but it's still in my system, particularly
Yes.
urine system,
Right.
that I'll be positive. This is what we're dealing with. There's a plus and a minus of where we're going. The first thing is saliva has been approved June 1st. The problem was there was not two laboratories to test it. There are now 2 laboratories testing. Just this week they rolled out. So there's 2 labs, because if a driver fails, he gets an option to also have it tested by another lab. Just the point here. And so that's going to happen. But one of the funny things that's scary about this is the projection is saliva, they're going to fail about 18-20% more drivers, because the drivers with urine were bringing somebody else's urine in.
Mm-hmm.
That's pretty hard to do.
Random and for the pre-employment.
Yeah.
I've had drug tests because I was on the roster, and and I would get called in now and then for drug tests. And if it's done properly in the eyes of the law, there's somebody, the water is shut off. They're taking, I believe they take temperature if it's done correctly. And it's pretty hard to bring in somebody else's urine, number one. Number two,
No, it's not,
Rico. Based on what I
not.
read, Chuck, you're dreaming, my friend.
They have like little bladders that they'll have attached to them, and they can go into the bathroom, and unless it's what's they call an observed.
You can't observe them. I mean, it's an invasion of privacy.
right?
And you can do everything you say, Chuck, but that's going to be the first.
But
push
they got a way.
now,
They got a way of doing it.
Saliva.
Now, the other thing though is, okay, for pre-employment, I can see that somebody that has been using drugs will go and they'll say to their friend or their mother or somebody, give me your, can I get some urine? But what happens when you walk into the office of your carrier and he says, Chuck, go in the bathroom right now. We need a drug test. Well, you don't have time, or God forbid, there's a crash, and you're taken away in an ambulance because you got a broken leg, and they drug test you at the hospital.
They can't.
You don't have
That doesn't quite. The drug test of the hospital doesn't count, Chuck.
Okay.
It's got to be a drug, and you get 32 hours before you have to, for other than alcohol. Alcohol's in 2 hours or 4 hours, no later than 4, no within 2 to 4 hours. That part, but the other's 32 hours. There's times to do that. But this brings up a point. It's even the lawyer I was talking to. We want to use saliva for the roads for the crash test, because that stays in your system the least. Even though you use urine or hair, hair is going to happen this year. Hair is going to become something.
We're going to lose a lot of drivers with hair testing because it shows anything anybody has done in 6 months.
Well, 3 to 6 months. That's absolutely right. And the problem now is there's a number of major trucking companies who are using hair, but a failed hair test is not reported to the clearinghouse because it's not an approved test. Even when you have a hair test, you have to then do a urine test to verify. If you pass the urine test, then it's not reported. If the government puts it in with a hair test, which they're going to approve, this lawyer says absolutely no question in his mind, it's going to happen in the next 2-3 months. Now that will be reported to the clearinghouse, which then takes them out of the ability to drive. But you know what the ridiculous part about this is that the citizens don't understand? You only have to test the driver of a vehicle 26,000 GVW or larger.
Right.
Rocco, how many GVWs does the Sprinter van have?
Oh,
What's
you
a
talking
GVW
about
Sprinter van?
maybe about what, 8,000
or 9? Guess where they're driving?
all
Same
across
place
the
we
country.
are.
And making deliveries in our neighborhood with our kids, and they're not being drug tested. This is where the drivers are going.
Yeah.
You know what?
You can't make quite as much, but if you want to keep your lifestyle, you clearly can make a decent living in those kind of that
So,
kind of
Tommy, do
element
you
part,
think they're
and we
gonna-
don't think about that.
So Tommy, do you think that with, like, it sounds like there's a dichotomy here because it sounds like they're coming out with newer and better methods for drug testing on one hand, but on the other hand, we've got several states, I think it's about 16 now, that have legalized marijuana.
22.
Is it 22 now? And I guess they all saw the tax revenue that California and Colorado got, and they've all followed through. There won't be long until the United States follows suit with Canada, and they legalize it at the federal level eventually.
Yeah, there's a lot of moving parts here, and I've had someone predict absolute that. I've had someone else who knows all the drug regulations that you'd have to change a whole lot of laws to legalize it, but it makes no sense not to economically. I mean, when you cannot take marijuana from Washington to California in a vehicle with more than 4 tires on it, even though it's legal in both states. Because you cross the state lines and the vehicle is
for the
regulated.
benefit of some of our listeners,
So in other words, you need a motorcycle.
Well, I mean, pickup truck, but you get 10,001, which then becomes regulated in interstate commerce.
right?
I mean, that just doesn't make any sense. And the banks, you can't deposit the money in the bank.
Oh,
Because-
is that where the Bitcoin
And a
fits
federal
in?
bank, a federal chartered bank. Because it's illegal federal money. You can't put in a bank where your money's where you have federal insurance. You can't put in a bank with federal insurance because it's an illegal earnings part of it. So those things, commerce is going to have to be straightened out. The one that bothers me about this is I am a firm believer that marijuana can be medicinal. I think the people
That was
who are
going to be
selling it.
I was going to be a follow-up question. I was going to ask, what about people that may have a medical marijuana card?
Well, Rico, I think it's too easy to get a medical marijuana card. That's the problem now. And anybody who really doesn't need it, can go get a card. But the
Right.
ones who are really in pain or glaucoma things, it is medically beneficial.
Right, if you have glaucoma, you're probably not driving a truck anyways.
Well, I know, but
I hope not.
well, we're dealing, Chuck, in that, but we're dealing with work comp, even the pain. I mean, I'd rather
Right.
take that from pain in some of these
I
cotton,
agree.
cotton, this kind of stuff. It just, and I know it does give relief in that. So how do we balance when it's truly a medical? And then are we making reasonable accommodations? Because there are some drugs that they could take, even drivers with a prescription for certain diseases.
Yeah,
And because marijuana is illegal, they can't do that.
yeah, but and on the other hand, nobody wants a bunch of high truck drivers running up and down the road. We had that during the 60s and 70s and 80s. And you know what? A lot of times it didn't fare well.
If you want to make the next billionaire, figure out how you can take a saliva or urine test and measure the degree of impairment.
Yes. Well, apparently
Like
now,
you can with alcohol.
Right.
Breathalyzers show you less than 0.04. You're not impaired.
right. Up in Canada, I have a friend of mine who's a police officer, and she was telling me that we have, marijuana is totally legal up here. And there's marijuana stores. The little town near our farm has 5,000 people, and there's 3 marijuana stores to service 5,000 people. So it's quite popular. But she was saying that if they think somebody has been smoking marijuana, they will bring them back to the police station, and every police station has someone there that can administer some sort of a test that shows level of impairment.
Well,
I don't know what it
I
is.
haven't heard it down here, but that's the answer, Chuck.
I agree. That is the answer. And I think the technology or I think the machinery may be there already. I think it's probably a legal thing that's causing it from being known. But if one of our listeners has any idea, I'd love to find out what happens in the United States right now when you have somebody that has taken marijuana and they get caught. What is the test? If they're driving a vehicle and they're slurring their words and can't walk a straight line, but they haven't had any alcohol, how do they know? Especially if it's a car driver.
Well, in America, if you got any THC in your system, you failed. From a driver's standpoint, it's got to be reported to the clearinghouse. I don't care when you did.
Car driver, what happens then if somebody's driving their automobile and they're all over the road? A police officer pulls them over, and the person is not making any sense, can't walk a straight line. They give him a breathalyzer test, and he hasn't had anything to drink. What happens then? Any idea?
I've never asked that question, Chuck. That's a very interesting question because they still could cite him for impairment or high. I know some cases where they have smelled the marijuana in the car and cite him for things like that, but I don't know what the follow-up test is. I'd imagine they go in and take a urine test, and just escort them in just like you would a breathalyzer.
Yeah, I'm just curious to see what they do because those people they're a menace to the road.
Right, and again, you get age differences here too.
Yeah,
Rico, what do you think about the marijuana situation? You deal with drivers. You're younger than Chuck and I, much younger than Chuck and I both, or much younger than me.
Younger than us put together.
You're the younger generation.
I've never been a fan of marijuana use. Never, just never was my thing. Even when I was young,
I wasn't accusing you. I was talking about your peers and all because I haven't either. So I'm just talking about you running around with more people that might be apt to that than
but I do know
than others is what I'm saying.
That a lot of people, all across the board, are very, very pro marijuana, very, very pro legalization of marijuana. And I guess that's a personal decision or whatever. I just have never really illicit drugs or any kind of drugs for that matter has just never really been my thing. I've maybe had an adult beverage or two in my day, but
who hasn't?
There's two other things that I don't know if your driver's aware, and this comes back. I don't want to get into the new CSA scoring and stuff like that, but there are two major changes in that scoring that your drivers need to be aware of. The first one, Chuck, that you mentioned, a failed drug test now is unsafe driving.
Yes.
It's not going to be a drug test category amount. It's unsafe driving. But now you're going to have two maintenances, a driver observed maintenance category and a non-driver and a fleet maintenance category. And if the driver gets stopped and there's something that they should have caught on the DVIR, the driver vehicle inspection report, they're going to be cited for that. So this is where, Rico, how often the drivers just blow off this because they get paid for it. They don't document it. And the law is kind of strange because you only have to document, not that you did it, only have to document if there's a violation. But now, let's making it mandatory. But now with this, it's going against their PSA, pre-employment, and they're going to run up that fleet. So this is going to be a big insurance review here because that's the motor carrier who's telling the driver, if you're going to work for us, you got to do your DVIR. And that's an important part of the maintenance, problems later down the road, even at post-crash time. And the driver's going to be impaired, are going to be cited for that. That's going to be something that the drivers, you tell me, Rico, I hear drivers skip on that more than we would want them to.
Absolutely. Well, so when is this supposed to go into effect, Tommy?
It is proposed. There are comments March 15th. It's going to happen before the year's out. I mean, May 15th, they haven't posted the final rule, but the challenges to the rule, their input for the rule, stopped on March the 16th. So it's going to happen. And this is a done deal. It's going to happen within the next year. And the other thing, we don't have a CSA score anymore with violations. They're going to reduce the categories from 900 some to 140, and you're going to be cited for that. And you're going to get a 1 period, no matter what it was. If you have a violation, you're going to get a 1. And if you get out of service, you're going to get that 1's going to be a 2. Wow. So it's going to be a whole different kind of a measurement system in that area. They're going to still do a time. And if you clean your act up, I love this. You clean your act up and you do not get another violation in that same, it's going to be safety categories instead of basic. That's going new term. Then after a year, your past history there, your previous here history is wiped out.
Okay. So this is something that we probably need to definitely, maybe in a future show, we need to maybe go a little bit more, take a little bit of a deeper dive on the new CSA.
Yeah, my concern is how it's going to affect the driver and the insurance industry, because we're going to have to re-look how we look at things, because we pay so much attention to these alerts and these scores. We're going to start looking at the actual police reports to know what they were doing wrong. And it makes some sense because, as you know, Rico, some states just stack a violation on top of violation.
Absolutely.
And they're stopping that. This is why they're stopping that part of it. I mean, the example I use, there's 400 and a little over 400 different hazmat violations. They're going to reduce to 14.
Okay.
Because, you got the wrong placard. You know what I'm saying. You got the wrong packaging. Through just to get money here. But we might want to see what the actual violations were, because the violation is still going to show. It just doesn't translate into a score that goes in CSA.
Indeed. Well, I'm looking at the time, gentlemen.
Before you ruin everybody's fun, Rico, I got one more question for Tom. Have you seen any turnaround with the insurance companies themselves? Have any of them started making money?
They're saying they are, Chuck. Most of them, we have 5. The market's competitive now. We got 5 or 6 new players, all tied to a technology play.
Okay.
Cameras, Samsung, driver app. 3 companies in the last 2 months announced a program tied with one of the tech companies to write their insurance at a cost. A local. Even Progressive will give a 15% credit if you share the ELD information with them, which is how you drive.
Yeah. They'll all demand that within a short period of time.
Well, once again, Tommy, we appreciate you for being so gracious with your time and coming on and helping explain the insurance the maze of insurance to us a little bit more in depth, kind of being our tour guide around insurance. If you don't mind, Tommy, let everyone know where they can find you, and if they have any questions, how they can get in contact with you.
It's very simple. The best thing is email me, and you spell my name on the room. This is my first name, Tommy, at mcief.org. Motor Carriers Insurance Education Foundation, mcief.org.
ORG.
Yeah. And that's the best way. Email me that. I get the email. I respond all the time, just like the thing I showed you, how to get your loss of earnings and stuff you need besides that, because your physical damage carrier won't pursue that. They don't have a right to pursue that because they didn't pay it.
Right.
And your agency, our agencies are the ones with TRS designation. They're the people who spent 48 hours in front of me and passed the test. So they know a little bit about trucking insurance. And Parker down at, your agency, you are one of the agencies that are part of our stuff.
Cool. Well, we appreciate it again, Tommy. Chuck, let the people know
thank you so much. Ladies and gentlemen, if you want to get hold of me, best way these days is send me an email to chucksnow280@outlook.com. Put your phone number on it, because these days it's a lot easier for me to call you if you've got a question, if you're having some difficulties, any challenges. If you want to get set up with Traffics, I still know lots of people there, and I'll put you in the right hands. And with that, Rico, I'm going to let you back her in a hole for another week. Well, actually another 2 weeks, because next week is your big holiday down there. Up in Canada, we celebrate the 1st of July, and our American brothers and sisters celebrate the 4th of July. We should only get together and make it one big holiday for all of us.
Well, that's what I was getting ready to say. So, ladies and gentlemen, we'll see you guys in 2 weeks. We'll take a little bit of a hiatus to get some other things squared away and get some stuff done. But in the meantime, in between time, we want you guys to please stay safe out there, stay healthy, keep it in between the mustard and the mayonnaise. And God willing, we'll talk at you in 2 weeks, not 1 week, in 2 weeks. God bless you guys and good night.
Catch on the flip flop. God
Thank
bless.
you, guys.
Thanks
you,
again, Tommy.
And Rico, if you go to a football game, Clemson game, let me know. You can tailgate with my family. All right.
I definitely will, but I plan on coming down your way in your neck of the woods.
Well, they're right beside Fife, the 2 inches before the stadium, in front of Fife's doors.